part two of finding my father and using historical documents like the Philadelphia historical documents, the federal census records, the World War II registration card, and his birth certificate, and what else? And family, of course. Finding my dad was amazing, of course, and finding different pictures of him that his family was able to keep throughout the years was just amazing for me because I finally got a chance to see what he actually looked like. But I just wanted to know a little bit more. I just wanted to know what his what the area he grew up in. So my father, he was born in Newark, New Jersey on May 7th, 1926. And when he was about 3 years old, his mother and his two younger sisters had left Newark, New Jersey, left her husband and their father, and she moved to Philadelphia, the north part of Philadelphia, when he was about 3 years old. So I had built up this information and I had came up with these pictures. I had searched so many years to come up with these different pictures so I can piece together my father's life. So this is part two, and it's around 1938 I discovered, well, my father, he should have been about 13 or 14 years old. And this is a picture of him at 13 or 14 years old and his two younger sisters. And I thought about his dad, and I asked my cousins and them, like, what happened with my father's dad? Like, why did they leave? And I knew it had to be something like really severely for her to just to leave, like I get it. But they really didn't know. They had all these different stories, but I got to digging. So the next clip, I'll show you a little bit more about my father's father, which is my grandfather, during the time when my dad was turning 13 or 14 years old. This is a newspaper clipping that was on May 3rd, 1938. This newspaper clipping. I'll move over. And this newspaper clipping is about my grandfather. And this was during a time when my dad was turning 13 or 14 years old, where he kind of needed his dad. He was turning into, a young man. But this article here basically says that his father was hitchhiking in Cokesville, PA, on the side of the road, throwing rocks at cars, allegedly upset no one would give him a ride. Police was called, and Kerry Timmons ran up, you know, to the cop, and I guess they were like, whatever. But he ran off, and there was a pursuit, and the officer got hurt. He didn't, but he got severely hurt. My grandfather was captured, and he was kind of hurt too. But because he did that in 1938, he was convicted to life to an insane asylum in Chester, PA, for the rest of his life. And that's where he died alone in an insane asylum. The next clip is a picture of what the insane asylum looked back then. This is of course, an old picture of the Chester County Insane Asylum, which was, I think, later called in Breeville Insane Asylum, and it ran from the early 1800s all the way until I think it closed down. Don't quote me on this. In the 70s, like the government shut it down. But this is in hallway. Um, yeah, discovering this, just the stories is just, it just makes it more pungent. You know, you can almost just like hear the people screaming in those hallways. But this is during the time when my dad was turning 13. His father was committed to an insane asylum because he was allegedly throwing rocks on the side of the road and took pursuit. And so let's move on. In 1940, my dad was about 14, 15 years old, and he was now living in Philadelphia, and he was living with his mother and his two younger sisters and a stepfather. And they were living on Sartain Street in Philadelphia. And the address was actually 1243 Sartain Street. And Sartain Street, the area where he lived in, as you can see by the picture, was a housing community. And I just find myself looking for my father in this picture. But the clothes hanging out on the line, and the benches in the front is just the essence of it. And you know, now he has a stepfather, and they're in a community of people with fathers. I see a gentleman out front. So I have another picture of this community. This is another picture of the area, the housing community where my dad grew up with his mom and his new stepdad and his two sisters. This is like, I'm assuming that's the back part of it. It just, for me, I'm so glad I did this because I don't know what I was thinking. You know, I don't know what I was thinking, what his life was like. You know what I mean? I just never thought about that until I started looking for him. And I just, because I never got a chance to talk to him and to hear his voice and to hear his stories, you know, I never got it. But seeing these pictures of his life growing up, I'm just, I have one more. This picture here is a little older, but it's the same area that my dad and his family may have been at one of those addresses. Honestly, I don't even know what to think or how to feel, but it's just seeing, you know, what life was like for my dad, myself, like, it makes me want to think a lot, you know what I mean? And to keep going. Part 3.